Grade 11s, today we're going to be solving rational equations. So when we're starting our solving, our first step is always going to be to factor the denominator. I'm going to start by factoring all these pieces. And now that it's all factored, I see that I have here an adding sign. So we know that when we add, we need a common denominator. So I know that I need to multiply this guy by a z plus 2 and also by a 6 on both top and bottom. And then I know that I need to multiply this guy by a z minus 2 on both top and bottom. And this guy just needs a 6 on both top and bottom. From here, we can multiply those top parts. So once we multiply, we're going to get this. Now the cool thing about equations, or when I'm solving an equation, again, we know it's an equation because there's an equal sign, but once I get a common denominator, that part is not needed anymore besides for the non-permissible values. So once I find my non-permissibles, which here are z not equal to or negative 2, then we can cross them out and only work with our top part that was all multiplied. So from here, we're just going to add our like terms together. So I have a 10z minus an 8 and a 6z plus a 12. I'm going to move my 8 over to be with my 12 and move my 6 over to be with my 10. So we're going to end up with a 4z on this side and a 20 on this side. Divide out your 4, so z is going to equal 5. Now what does that mean? That means that our z-intercept, so in most questions it'll be our x-intercept. In this case, our z-intercept is 5. Notice how it's also not one of your non-permissible values. That's a good thing. But we need to finally check our answer by plugging it back in. Okay, let's try another problem. All right, so this one's a your turn. So I am going to just kind of start it for you and then see if you can finish it. So when I look at this question, I see that this denominator needs to be factored. And now that it is factored, we can multiply out by whatever it's missing. So this guy needs a y minus 6 on top and bottom, and this guy needs a y minus 3 on top and bottom. So now my denominators are all the same, and I can cancel them out. So I'm going to get you to pause the video now and see if you can finish the question. To finish the question, we're going to multiply this in. So we're going to get 9y minus 54 minus 4y plus 12 equals 18. Be careful because of that subtracting sign. Subtracting has to go into both. So on this side, we're going to be left with 5y. And I'm going to move my 54 over and 12 over to get 60. Divide up by 5, so y equals 12. So we have an answer, but let's make sure it's not one of our non-permissible values. So in this question, our non-permissible values are going to be y cannot be 3 and y cannot be 6. So far, it looks good, but you should still check it by plugging it back in to the original question. Let's try another one. All right, so for our next question, again, we always start by factoring the denominator. I'm not going to factor the numerator because of the foiling that would cause me later. So from here, I've got my factors. Now we're going to multiply to get a common denominator. So this guy needs a k plus 2. This guy needs a k minus 2. And now our denominators are the same, so we'll be able to eliminate them. So on the top, we've got some extra foiling here to do. So we're going to get quadratics on the top. That's going to be something different. So take a second here and do your foiling. Once you do your foiling, you should end up with what I have on the board. Notice also how I have a subtract and then I put a bracket here, and that's just to remind me that that negative is going to have to end up going in. So pause the video, take a second to get all of your foiling, and then all we need to do from here is combine like terms. So we're going to finish adding our like terms together, but since it's quadratic, our strategy is always to set it equal to 0. So we've got to try to move everything over to one side. Now I'm going to move this side with the k squared over to be with the 3k squared just to keep my leading coefficient positive. So move it over now. And then our next step is to factor. So I'm going to factor out a 2. This part should factor nicely, giving us a k minus 6 and a k minus 2. And then I have 2 factors. So k equals 6 and k equals minus 2. Now, we have to go back to our original question and check with our non-permissible values. So I see that I have a k cannot equal 2 or negative 2. Uh-oh, wait a second, I got down here that k does equal negative 2. So since negative 2 is non-permissible, that's going to be an extraneous value. But the k equals 6 will end up working when you check it. So you only need to check the k equals 6 because the other one we already know is extraneous. Alright, this next one's at your turn. So see if you can pause the video right now and solve it on your own. Remember the factors are to factor, then get a common denominator. Then, once the common denominators are the same, you can get rid of the denominator, and then we can just start working with the tops. If you've had a chance to try it, you can press play, and we'll just quickly finish going through it. So again, in this question, I see that we have a quadratic. So goal is to set it to 0 and then factor. So here we have a 3x squared minus a 14x, and when I bring this 25 over, we're going to end up with a positive 15. And this is one of those trickier kinds of factoring that you're going to need to know how to do. So I'm going to take that 3x squared and split it into a 3x and an x in the front. And then I have to play with that 15. It does end up being a minus 5 and a minus 3, which gives us 2 different answers. One of them is x equals 3. The other is x equals 5/3. Again, make sure you do your non-permissible values, which in this case, x cannot equal 3 or negative 2. So again, I have an extraneous answer here with the x equals 3. So the only answer I need to check is the x equals 5/3. So next up, you're going to work on the assignment. Thanks, you guys.